So, Miss Mayhew, I watched you do the three-part drill and the words for dictation. Some positive feedback during your auditory drill. We had talked about how you had said that it really has helped your students with being able to spell words and read words in that consistent part of the drill. And we talked about sometimes, since it's the third part, it can be the part that's, accidentally skipped or overlooked. Also, during your words for dictation, you did a really great job with differentiating for students. I mean, one student who's not quite there yet was practicing letter formation. Another student who doesn't tap out, but you know that he sounds out the sounds. So you did a really nice job with that. And then giving the visual example for the sentence, I thought was really helpful for them, for students who maybe had forgotten to capitalize or use punctuation or didn't have correct spelling. Right. And they were doing a really nice job following along and checking their work. And I also liked how on the paper, some of your students had written COPs, and they, every time they went through it, they put a check if it was, after they had checked to make sure that it was done. One question that I had for you to think about was time. How much time you had spent flashing the cards, the drills, and auditory drill, and the words and sentences for dictation. Based on what you had thought about, after reflecting, did you think you had spent enough time? Did you think you spent maybe a little too much time, or did you think that it was just the right amount of time?
Definitely with the flashcards, that was quick and to the point, and even with the blending board, I felt like there were enough examples to get them going. And then on the sand tray, I spent a little bit more time only because I knew M-class testing, and I'm really trying to drill those different blends because they've been working so hard and seeing it. And so normally that would be shorter, but over the past week or so, I've extended that. And then the written dictation took a little bit longer this time because of the sentence structure. I had picked out longer sentences that took a little bit more time for the kids to do, and I'd rather it be done right than us rush through it. And we hadn't had OG in 3 days in a row, so I kind of was being flexible with my time. But normally, it normally takes me about 30 minutes to get through everything. The most is 35, but that day I think I went about 40 minutes.
And then I thought it was really helpful when you did the blending board to already have the words that you wanted to blend
I don't see how other teachers can go through, flash the cards, and then put everything in order. Even when you have it marked, that beginning and the end sound, that I just can't do that. So I always go through in the afternoons before my lesson the next day and strategically look for either sounds or words that I feel that they need to see or that they might be struggling on, and then I have it ready to go. And then in the mornings when I get here, I will go through and just kind of double check so that I know when to switch that beginning sound or end sound. And sometimes I even make a little list that I can look at so that I don't get ahead of the game.
And how do you know when to switch out your cards for when you drill?
When I'm drilling the first part, I definitely watch to see who's getting it, and if they're missing it consistently. I know when you were in here, for whatever reason that day, CK was just not kicking it that day. One of the little girls kept messing it, and so I was kind of pulling that direct instruction back in. Normally they don't miss it, but I just put that back in, and then I know the next day I want to keep that in. And then if I see during daily 5 time or during our written time, if there's a sound or something they're struggling with, I'll pull it in. Or if I just feel they need a review. And then especially after our OG assessments, I'll pull from that and stem that into it to make sure that if there was something we weren't getting right. And even with the written part, I like to let them see it up here so that hopefully that visual cue when they go to write it will help them.
Yeah, I also, if you, I don't know if you noticed, but the CK was also something that they wanted to put in.
Right, in the written dictation.
Written dictation. So knowing that it was something that you saw in the first part of the drill and the second part of the drill, what would be your next steps?
We will go back, review where CK falls into place. Obviously, like we talked about even when we were doing it, I'm not going to touch on like if there's an ED at the end, but looking at the word, is C the last official sound? You have to think about it. Is there a magic E maybe at the end of the word making that vowel be long and strong, or is there something else that's going at the end of the word? If there's not, then we know that it's CK. So it's that kind of tricky part where they're starting to get the concept, and then even during like my ELA mini lessons, I try to spiral that into that so that they're seeing CK in words and then words that do not end with CK because of the different vowel teams.
So on average, how long would you say the 3-part drill takes you when you
put it all together?
Put it all the 3 parts.
I'll spend no more than like 35 minutes. Sometimes it might go to 40 like it did that day.
Right. That was with the words, the dictation.
Everything in it. But most of the time with the 3-part drill, we're in and out. With the visual cues, I spend no more than 2 minutes on that.
That's
the
great.
blending board is probably 2 to 3 minutes, unless there's like a big, like, sometimes, especially with the Magic E stuff, at the beginning, I did a lot of like, oh, let's look at the word without the Magic E. Oh, see how that Magic E plays a difference. So I spend a lot of time on the blending board then, but I try to keep my stuff at a good pace that meets the kids, because obviously I've got high kids that can read that word like anything, and I've got the kids that need that visual modeling of me tapping the sound. But I definitely try not to go more than like 3 to 4 minutes on the blending board.
And then usually the auditory in the sand.
Probably about 5 minutes, maybe 6. It just, I've just been trying to, especially with the OG assessment coming up, just trying to really hit the things like the B's and the D's, because I get that backwards. And like now that we've learned multiple ways to write things, really trying to hit that. But I'll pull back once M class is done, because it's just trying to make everything fall into its place when they're reading.
Right. And when are you guys giving your OG assessment?
Our OG assessment is not next week, but the following week. So the Tuesday when we come back from Memorial Day. So we're giving ourselves 4 days to kind of hit anything and then be done. And then obviously that last week of school, if we need to hit anything harder, we can go back. Or if we can continue, we can add some things in just to prepare them for summer in 2nd grade.
Right. And so then as a grade level, how much time does it take you guys to usually come together to talk about your data and what you'll need to do next?
Once we've gotten everything, we spend 1 to 2 PLCs kind of looking at everything and then deciding what our steps are for, especially like at the MOY. We looked at it strategically, and obviously sometimes we might not need the same things. So that teacher has the discretion of how they're going to do it. Are they going to spend a whole lesson, or are they going to spiral? Like I had a couple things that just needed to be spiraled, like Q and U, and I just was spiraling that, and like the Z's and the L's, and just spiraled that. And literally after a week of spiraling that, my kids were rolling in that again and going, oh, I've got this. And I pull back on it, and I'm seeing it in their written responses during like our mini comprehension.
And then one last question. I know it wasn't a question that I had posed to you, but as I was thinking through with what we were talking about and you going through M class, was there any phonics that you saw? Just, I know you were testing another class, but did you see a pattern of anything that as a grade level you had seen maybe we need to go back to just through doing the assessments?
I mean, there's obviously like the lower kids that are below grade level, a lot of them struggled with that Magic E concept. I noticed that like with the word rope, if they didn't use those picture clues, some of them were saying ROP or something else. And then some of the vowel teams, which unfortunately not everybody on our grade level has gotten to those hunks and chunks and vowel teams. But it's starting, you can see the kids are really blending, or if you say, hey, sound this word out, they're getting it. And just really, I think, still hitting heavily on the high frequency words. I know that we do the Heidi songs, but I just think as a grade level, everybody needs to be on the same page and really hitting that strategically, because in my opinion, it makes a huge difference when you're hitting that, because that's what, it just sticks with them. It's that kinesthetic, that singing, and it sticks in their brains. And when they get to a word and they don't know it and they can't sound it out, they'll sit there and look at the letters, and then they start singing a song. And even with their writing, it's just made a huge growth across the board.
And then finally, are you open for any feedback?
Yes.
One thing, you know how you did a really good job with having your sentences for
Yes.
them to see? As I was walking around when you were doing the words for dictation,
Right.
the ones that were struggling, if they had a visual, it could have been
Right.
really helpful
Okay.
for them.
Okay. That's,
All right.
yeah.
So your next step, CK, and then you're going to look at your assessment as a grade level
Right.
during PLC.
And
to
then we're
see.
also moving into Val teams before the assessment because with our M class getting switched, it allowed us an extra week to pull in like the different little like AIs and stuff. So we're going
Great.
to go back and hit that.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.